Thank you for tuning in into December 2024 Director's Cut. We have Director of Mineral Resources, Nathan Anderson, who will share October 2024 production numbers.
All right, good afternoon and welcome to the December 2024 Director's Cut. Thank you for everyone that is joining us both in person and online. The holidays are upon us, and I want to take a moment during this time of the year to thank the team at the DMR, the Oil and Gas Division, the Geologic Survey, the Corps Library in Grand Forks, and the Paleo team here in Bismarck at the Heritage Center. Thank you for all your resilience and tremendous efforts throughout the year. I want to thank the leadership team at the DMR for their commitment to the agency during the leadership transition period, specifically Mark Bohr for continuing to put all this data together and disseminate it. And then one last thanks to someone that has crossed the 45-year of service to the agency, and that is Ed Murphy. Thank you, Ed, for your dedication and leadership to the Geologic Survey in the state of North Dakota. With that, we'll go ahead and get started. In December, it's important to note that we're covering October production numbers. Oil production numbers in the state produced 36,517,000 barrels of oil in the month of October, which equates to 1.178 million barrels per day. September, it was at 36 million barrels per day, or for the month, and 1.2 million barrels for the day. That is down about 520,000 barrels for the month, September to October, and about 22,000 barrels per day for the month. This is largely due to the wildfires that occurred starting later in the first week of October, and those shut-ins that remain for on and off for the remainder of the month. So it's down 1.8%, but it is up, still up to the revenue forecast 7%. 97% of that production is from the Bakken and Three Forks. 3% of it is from the legacy pools. On crude oil pricing, the month of October has North Dakota Light Sweet at right around $65.31, WTI at $72 a barrel, and the North Dakota market at $65 a barrel. Revenue forecast for that was at $70, so we're 7% low to revenue forecast. Gas production, the month of October produced 106 BCF in the state, which is 3.4 BCF for the day. September was at 107 BCF and 3.56 BCF per day. So again, down about 4.1% due to the wildfires throughout the state. The number of wells permitted in the state was up a little bit in October from September. September was at 100 and October was at 111. I think it's important to note that the trend that we've been seeing over the last several years is less 2-mile lateral wells being permitted, and more and more 3-mile lateral permits coming in. And most recently, there's been probably a half a dozen 4-mile lateral permits. So the trend to longer and longer laterals continues in the state. The rig count in North Dakota for the month of October was 39. November is 37, and today we have 37, 2 of which are on federal surface. I've added a section in here, other relevant rig counts. The United States has a rig count of 589. These are all Baker Hughes Intel rig report. Texas has 284. New Mexico, which is the number 2 oil producing state in the nation, is at 104. Oklahoma at 43, and again, North Dakota at 37. From a basin standpoint, the Permian is at 304. Rigs, and the Williston Basin, like I mentioned, is right around 40, including Montana and North Dakota. So roughly half the rigs in the United States are in the Permian Basin. That also produces about 8 million barrels of oil per day of the 13.2 million barrels per day that's produced in the U.S. each day. Wells waiting on completion has October at 331 for the state. Inactive wells is at 1,796 and remains relatively consistent month over month. Completed wells for November is at 98. That's a preliminary number. October was at 95. The number of producing wells in the state, again, set a new all-time high at 19,334. 89% of those are Bakken and Three Forks wells, and 11% of those are from the legacy conventional pools. So again, 3% of that production comes from that 11% of those wells. So moving on to the IIJA grant, which is the $25 million grant specifically for plugging and abandonment. 73 wells have been plugged with that, and 82 sites have been reclaimed. We expect this to be closer to the 110 mark once all the grant money is all wrapped up. Moving on to production from the Fort Berthold Reservation, oil production on the reservation is at 177,000 barrels per day, and there's one rig running on there. They have 2,950 active wells and just 2 wells that are waiting on completion. Production continues to drop slightly month over month, and I would likely contribute this to just less activity and a rig count that doesn't quite add the same production as the decline. So that's the high-level summary from the Fort Berthold Reservation. General comments, the drilling rig count remains steady. Even with the mergers and acquisitions across the United States, this is expected to increase gradually to the mid-40s sometime over the next couple of years. There's 14 frac crews currently active in the state. Operators continue to maintain a permit inventory of approximately 12 months. There hasn't been any seismic activity in the state. A little bit on flaring. The statewide gas flare from September to October increased 2.7 million cubic feet per day to 192 million cubic feet per day. Statewide gas capture dropped 1% to 94%, while the Bakken gas capture number remained constant at 95. Below that, there's a little bit more information on gas capture details, but the Bakken continues to have strong gas capture throughout the state. In spite of the fires in October, this number remains high, which in my opinion is a positive indication that the wells were actually shut in and not vented during the fire event, and that's a positive. I guess one other thing that I'll be watching for, there's been a new administration elected into office, and geopolitics related to oil and gas that I'll be following is, you know, what this new administration does with certain countries like Iran and Venezuela. We also have new leaders on the energy side in office. Doug Burgum, if sworn in or when sworn in, as Secretary of the Interior, and then Chris Wright as Secretary of Energy. With that, that concludes my report. Happy holidays to you all. If there's no questions, I'll turn it over to Justin.
There is a question. So their question is, do you consider the loss of production from the wildfire significant or mild?
That's a good question. I mean, 500,000 barrels is significant. I would say that the way the industry responded is pretty impressive, and the number came back, I think, for November. So, you know, that 500,000 barrels is significant. 22,000 barrels a day is significant. In the 22,000 barrels over the course of 1.2 million. So I think the number is significant, but I think the industry responded well in getting that back once the threat of additional fires was over with the high wind events.
You know if there are wells still offline at this point, or is everybody back online?
We know that there's certain facilities that are still offline. I'm not sure of the exact count on that. I don't know if Mark or Justin has anything additional on that, but you know, we do know that there's facilities that were burned in those events, and different operators are in the process of bringing those back online.
How long does it usually take to get a well turned back online after being shut in?
Well, if there's no damage, it could be as quick as, you know, on a computer screen, there's you can just hit, you know, open the motor valve on location, and that can happen. But if there's damage, it you know, kind of runs into the whole procurement piece, whether the equipment's available locally or whether you have to source it somewhere else. So it could be, you know, just a couple minutes to as long as you know, several months.
On the reclamation grant, once it runs out, are you going to be applying for another grant or looking for state funds to reclaim more wells?
So there is another grant that's available right now, and Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but the agency right now is evaluating whether we're going to do that or not. There's a lot of stipulations on the federal side that need to be met in order to accept that grant. And then once you do take that grant on. There's a whole lot of work that needs to be done in order to follow up on the follow-up work to that grant.
Do you know offhand?
But we don't have a decision yet.
Do you know offhand about how many wells need to be reclaimed at this point?
I did get that number yesterday. I can't remember it exactly, but the state has very, very few orphaned, what's considered orphaned wells. I believe it was like 6 or 8, which in the scheme of orphaned wells on a state basis in the industry, it's very, very low. There's other categories in there where they're either temporarily abandoned or abandoned, and those are different. They're not truly orphaned. Somebody still has title on those. So yeah, I could get you those exact numbers if we needed to. Yeah. All right, thank you.
We let you off easy.
Yeah.
We now have Director of North Dakota Pipeline Authority, Justin Kringstad.
Good afternoon, everyone. Justin Kringstad, Director of the North Dakota Pipeline Authority. We'll get into some of the routine items that I typically cover each month, and then we've got some additional topics here later to cover. Sorry, we're having some trouble with the slide. For the online listeners here. Are they working online?
Yes, it should be. It's still loaded here. I'll have to open it again.
We'll build some suspense for everybody.
Okay.
Great.
Okay. It should be good to share.
Just let me know when you're ready.
Ready.
All right. Thanks, Bridget. Yeah, so on slide 2, just quickly taking a peek at our neighboring oil production. Montana still active with 1 drilling rig over there. South Dakota, 0 drilling rigs. And then you saw the numbers from Nathan earlier, and then kind of some consistent volumes coming out of that Montana portion of the play. When we look at slide 3, the one thing that I know there's a lot of midstream folks that tune in and watch this focused on, particularly on the gas side, which is one of our biggest challenges right now. Gas saw a significant decrease in October and a drop down as well in the GOR. I haven't had a tremendous amount of time to dig into the analytics behind that. I suspect it would likely be tied to those fires. And we think about where those fire events were, very much some of the highest productivity, higher GOR areas of the state. So we'll keep a close eye on this once we get the November, December numbers and see likely that trend continue upward. We look at some of the crude oil movements to start here. No major changes fundamentally on how the oil is being marketed from September to October. We've seen a bit of a narrowing in that Brent WTI spread, which typically then has a more meaningful impact on some of those rail decisions out of the Williston Basin. As of the month of October, though, very consistent, still right around 2 trains per day, give or take around that 140,000 barrels per day estimated to be leaving the state by rail car. We look at the pricing markets around the U.S. This is what the various refining centers were paying on average in the month of September, which is the latest data we have available. PAD 1, PAD 5, the 2 highest price markets, those are 2 areas that we cannot reach with pipeline connectivity. So we're fully reliant on rail networks in order to move that crude oil to those centers on PAD 1, PAD 5. EIA is estimating that almost over 80% of that oil leaving North Dakota is headed to the Pacific Northwest. Still some trickles that do get down to those California refineries, but a very, very small percentage of that. The lion's share is up in the far northwest corner of the U.S. and those light sweet refineries at that location. We look at the pricing update for crude oil. We saw some more weakening in that Clearbrook market, $1.55 below WTI at Clearbrook. We've seen some of that in some of the posted pricings and some of the data that we watch. The discount you saw in Nathan's report, it's $6.86 in October. There's a potential that we see even larger discounts here in that November, December timeframe. Nothing official yet, but we'll keep an eye on that. That's a very important figure for all of us as we head into the legislative session, those budget discussions, where production is going to be, where the benchmark price is, and how that discount ties back into that. Imports, exports, we saw the exports from North Dakota go down to 0. Imports, again, this is truck and rail movements primarily. Some barrels coming in. They'll blend with a Bakken barrel to upgrade that, and they'll get on our pipeline systems. But as of October, that data suggesting that no North Dakota barrels going up for blending up in that Canadian marketplace. No changes on slide 11 and slide 12 as far as the flaring and the reason for that flaring, still at 5%. Majority of that gas being flared from locations with pipeline connectivity. That is, again, been a fairly consistent trend, as you can see here over the last 2+ years. Last month, I raised a little bit of a caution flag to keep an eye on the number of wells getting connected to gas gathering and the number of wells producing gas. There was a bit of a disconnect. We saw that teeter-totter move back the other direction in October, which is encouraging. That's exactly what we were hoping for, that we saw more wells getting connected to the gas gathering system than new wells coming online, which is, as I mentioned, key piece to that gas capture picture. EIA did lower their oil price outlook as well again here in December. So you can see their trend out to the end of 2025, steady to slightly downward in that latter portion of next year. On the gas side, we'll get into some topics here. No major changes, no major announcements on the gas processing front. When we get into the gas transmission side, the one thing obviously that we always look at is what's happening with Northern Border. That's our critical piece of infrastructure to move natural gas to markets outside of North Dakota. Still trending in that 80 to 85 plus % range for market share on the Northern Border, meaning 15 to 20% of the gas still flowing down from Canada into those North Dakota and Midwest markets. We've seen some leaning out in the BTU, which means we're seeing some additional NGL capture taking place at the plants in North Dakota, which again is freeing up some of that residue space. So this graph ties closely to the last graphic, where depending upon what decisions are being made with ethane, some of the propane decisions, if that is removed from Northern Border with a leaner stream that we're looking at here, that makes more space available for volumes and fills up those NGL pipelines. There's a maintenance event on Northern Border that kicked off today, a 2-day event. They're going to reduce their throughput on that system by 190 million cubic feet per day. We'll see in the coming days how much of an impact that could have on North Dakota productions and decisions from those gas plants. Not a major or long duration event, which is encouraging. It will likely pretty minimal impact. Then lastly, a couple of the big things I wanted to hit on here on the gas front. This system that we've talked about now throughout the summer and fall is now in service. You can see on the right-hand side in the bottom corner, 100% on all the pipeline activities. Some of the cleanup work yet to do and the reseeding and the reclamation side continuing. But great news that on schedule. I know I was hearing reports of the crews working incredibly hard. Big strong push at the end to make sure that system was in service when it was designed to at the beginning of December. Some of those mats in that image getting cleaned up and the right-of-way getting prepped and ready for the winter here. And the last update, this is a project, proposed project that was released on Monday of this week. This is the WBI Energy Bakken East pipeline project. They launched a non-binding open season, and so for those of you not familiar with that terms, what this is essentially an opportunity for the pipeline company to propose a new project to those folks in the industry that would either be on the upstream side looking to move gas out, or folks on the downstream side looking to procure gas for either LDCs, power generation, or other industrial processes in North Dakota. And so this non-binding open season that was launched will run through the end of January. You can see some of the details here. That pipeline, looking at the map, is the red segment. This would, as proposed, would be 375 miles of new pipe, 30-inch and 24-inch, with a capacity of 760,000 decatherms per day. From a cubic foot, roughly 760 million cubic feet of capacity per day as proposed. Timeline of that, looking for the west segment of that to be in service as proposed in November of 2028. And then again, if sufficient commercial interest is secured, that east segment, the end of 2029 before that would be in service. So a two-phase proposed structure to the construction. Some of the other details for those that are looking at it from a commercial standpoint, they're seeking 20-year terms. Everything's negotiable, so they're going to work with potential customers to see what the interest looks like, and then some of the additional details there. So very, very encouraged by this step forward. As we've discussed for many years now, moving our residue natural gas is one of the key challenges that North Dakota is facing long term. And so this is one significant step in the right direction. Again, this is still early, so it is a proposed project, but I know their team is going to continue to work hard with potential users of that. We're going to continue as a state to look at some of the impacts this would have. We've got a legislative session coming up and a lot of discussions that'll be wrapped up and obviously continuing to set up the North Dakota's oil and gas sector for success. And this could potentially play a key role in that. So with that, I will pause and see if there's any questions online or in the room.
So is the state looking to be a shipper on this, or is it still sort of undetermined?
Still undetermined at this time. So the question for those online, would the state be a shipper in that? Through the Pipeline Authority Industrial Commission, the state would have that option. So as part of this, certainly those discussions will take place. So what would happen, this is a non-binding open season currently, depending upon the interest that's secured during this time window. Later, there would be a binding open season, and that would be an opportunity then for those folks to sign on the dotted line to commit to the project. And certainly the state's going to be part of those conversations throughout.
Going back to the testimony in the legislative session about why it hasn't happened at this point is that you need one big, or at least a few big, and customers are going to stay with the long run.
Correct.
So is this an indication that maybe they're confident that they found somebody or somebody's out there?
Yeah, so certainly great point. And I should have mentioned earlier, this is an effort that has been going on by the team at WBI for well over 10 years. And so this is something that has gone through many iterations. Certainly they would not go out with this if they hadn't already had some level of interest from potential users of that project. But you're absolutely correct. For any of these projects to go forward, you need to have commitment from those users for a sufficient amount, for sufficient duration to make it commercially feasible. And so this is the action step now to start solidifying some of those discussions and details.
Can you say what the end users are likely to be?
So the question for those online, can we talk about any of the end users? It's going to be a mix. It's likely not going to be one specific, but if I go back to some of the other projects that have been developed, some of the key things we would look at in the past has been kind of a production push. And so we've seen, a really strong effort by the producers to essentially push North Dakota gas to markets. What's different about this project, when you think about it, it's going to be a mixture of a supply push and a demand pull. And so some of that demand pull would come potentially from LDCs, other industrial users, power generation. There's been a tremendous amount of interest from data centers looking at North Dakota. And so all of those combined would be those shippers that they're looking to secure with this process.
They didn't give you a price tag of what this is going to cost.
No, there was no details on final construction costs.
I think I'm saying it too.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.